What's the most awkward question you've ever been asked? I was working in a call center doing tech support for a cable company. I fixed a lady's cable and she was so happy she asked me if I wanted to marry her daughter. I politely declined. I've always wondered what if, though. You look strong. Can we wrestle? A man in the grocery store. Do you want to marry someone pretty like your sister, my grandmother, while all of us were in one room together? How come you're not black? A 5-year-old asked me this while I was teaching preschool. He was black. My assistant teacher and his one-on-one were also black. They both started laughing while my brain reset itself trying to think of a good answer and also trying not to laugh. After my mom passed, I dropped a ton of weight due to the grieving and depression. I had a few people ask me if I lost weight to get back with my ex. We worked in the same place. He had been the one that started that rumor. It was very uncomfortable. Are you a virgin? Asked by a kid I was babysitting. Later that night, the kid's dad spontaneously kissed me, so it's pretty clear where the kid got that behavior from. Needless to say, I never babysat for our family ever again. When I was about 13, my mom and I were watching a parrot demonstration in front of a rainforest cafe. Another woman watching turned to me and said, "May I?" Immediately, with no further explanation, she took a strand of my long hair and held it out to the bird, who bit it. I was just standing there with my hair in a bird's mouth. We didn't know what to do. One of the weirder things that's happened to me. I have white shoulders and large breasts, and a guy sitting next to me on a flight, after he had a couple drinks, asked, "Homegrown or silicone?" I told him I carried extra sanitary napkins in my bra in case I got my period. Not a question per SE, but a bartender once refused to serve me at a wedding because he assumed I was pregnant. I was wearing an Empire waist dress. I was not pregnant. It was the most mortifying and insanely awkward experience I have ever been a part of in my entire life. Kinda awkward, also kinda creepy. When my niece was young, we were talking one day and she agreed me how old I was. I was 18 at the time, so I told her that. She replies with, "Wow, you're old. You're going to die soon. Can I have your car?" I had no idea how to answer that one. A fella started working for my old company, and first day, within 10 minutes of meeting him, he asks, "What's the worst thing that's ever happened to you?" Had no idea what to do with that one. Apparently his wife died in his arms, which sucks. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know, maybe don't lead with that. I might have gone on a date with him. FR though, first date after meeting online and texting for a bit. Within the first few minutes he tells me that his wife was also a nurse, I'm an RN, and that she even looked like me, then proceeds to tearfully tell me about her dying in his arms from anaphylaxis. I'm feeling a lot of empathy for him, but also rather uncomfortable as I don't know him well enough for all this, and the "you look a lot like her" had me worried. Said empathy was rapidly shifted to my "this person is not well, they're a patient" mindset when he awkwardly explained that he was crushingly lonely and ashamed of himself for being horny because he felt he was betraying her still point. So he asked me out as it felt less wrong in his grief-drowned heart. He basically wanted pity, intimacy, and for someone to hold him while he cried. I couldn't be that as I was fresh out of a horribly controlling and abusive relationship. So I became his nurse. I told him to go home and allow himself to grieve with his nearly adult children. He wasn't being brave and strong for them. He was showing them the lie that he had begun to move on and was doing okay. Told him to delete his dating profile because he was not ready for it, and it was not wise to trust strangers with his most vulnerable self. My parting shot was begging him to get himself and his kids grief counseling. Can you imagine what could have happened to his life if the wrong kind of person was on that date with him? I think in his grief, he forgot that VIPs hide behind a lot of pretty faces. My husband is 6'11", and I was meeting one of his coworkers for the very first time. I told the coworker it was nice to meet him, and the very first question that came out of his mouth was, "How hung is your husband? Is he really big?" If that wasn't enough, he tried to get me to tell him by measuring the length of his thigh and moving his hands together or apart for comparison. A job interview I was at one time. The vice president asked me if I was married. I said no, and then he said, "Why not?" Not a "family man." How interesting. I was 22 and had just graduated college. Within minutes of the start of a first date with a lawyer, I googled you, and your parents' divorce trial came up. Don't you think the court should have sealed those records because you were a minor at the time? My brother asked me if I had feelings for his girlfriend. I had to look at him in the eyes and tell him no and hope I didn't come off hesitant or awkward. A colleague asked where I go tanning. My ethnicity would tell you I was born with brown skin. Oh my god. Growing up I lived in a very white suburban area. In the morning before school during high school, my friend group would gather in the library. One day, one of my friends, who is admittedly not the brightest, asked our other friend, who is black, how do you stay so tan during the winter? Everyone was like, how old is your baby now? Asked by the doctor who told me my baby died at 29 weeks and held her after I delivered her. I don't see that doctor anymore. People asking about my non-existent love life. I try to just avoid those lines of questioning. If people ask me questions like that, then I give them a graphic description of some kink or another. They don't ask again. Similar vein, my mum kept asking when I'm gonna give her grandkids. So I started answering that I already have kids, but I'm not legally allowed to see them. I was living with my BF at the time in my aunt and uncle's vacation house, and when they came to visit they noticed a water stain on the ceiling and realized it was coming from the upstairs bathroom. My uncle asked in front of my aunt and a neighbor that had come to visit if it was from us having rough intimacy in the bathtub. It was from him installing the bathtub poorly. Are you sure you're actually a woman and not trans? This was asked by a friend of mine who was both very awkward and trans himself. So no offense was taken, but it was awkward. Though I still think my coworker coming up to me and saying I can always smell when women menstruate, but I've never smelled you menstruate. Are you infertile? Was actually much more awkward. Also, I somehow have the kind of personality where people feel comfortable enough to say the weirdest shit to me. I've got tons of examples of this kind of stuff. Was at a wedding for one of my wife's cousins right after my wife and I got married. Can't remember the exact circumstances, but someone with a kid walked up and after they left my wife's strange aunt said, "Doesn't that just ignite your paternal urges?" No ma'am, it certainly does not. Can I smell your feet? Asked by an elderly Japanese man in a subway station at 7 AM on a Tuesday. He went on to offer me money after I initially declined. So did you do it for the money? I had not slept or showered because I was at a rave for 2 days, and when I told him that to try to deter him further, he almost had a mini orgasm. I told him I had to go to work, which was true, but that I could meet up with him later hoping to get out of the awkward conversation. He offered to pay me money to skip work and go to his place. Swore he wasn't gay. I was thinking, you think seeming gay is the strange part of this conversation. And that's when it started feeling like serial killer vibes. I was young, in shape and a capable fighter, but if something went wrong and I got killed, how would my friends and family feel when they found out I died selling my stinky feet to a stranger in a subway station? Lol. He was very insistent on sampling the product there, and there was oddly few people at this station. So I gave him a quick whiff, gave him a fake phone number, and left for work never to see him again.